Hello, welcome back. This is Artisan Pianos. My name's Jake Putnam, and I have tried to tune a fish before, and no, we're not talking about that today. Today, we are we're talking about pitch raise, um, or an over pull, or a first pass. Um, there's a lot of different ways of calling it this, but basically, it's the same thing, right? um, goes by many different names, but this is one way of doing it. Um, I I thought about recording several different ways. The way I'm going to show you today, at least, is a little bit, well, could be a little bit thinking outside the box, but I also I decided that this is probably the way that I'd rather show this and let's talk about it, how different it is, and dissect that, um, and go from there. Um, I apologize in advance for um, possibly some echoes here and there. Let's if it's pretty bad, let me know. But yeah, this is let's switch it over, and then I'm going to mute my microphone just so that there's no um, delay and also no echo. And then also, um, because it's a video, we can stop, we can pause. And if you have a question about something specifically, um, let's talk about it. I can pause it and then we can keep going afterwards. Um, that's the great thing about this, and also keeping the timing of it. It'll be great. We don't have to. We won't get distracted by doing it live. Although, if the video doesn't work, we'll see. We can do it live still. So uh, let's try it. Here we go. um,
Oh, I guess one question as a preparatory to this,
yes, sir.
how far out does a piano have to be before you consider it a quote unquote pitch raise versus just tuning it up?
That is a good question. My hard fast rule always is um, 10 cents no matter what has to be pitch raised. Um, if it's a studio piano, if it's a um, if it's a concert, then that becomes less for me. I actually would rather do a pitch raise at like 8, or less, because a pitch raise adds stability. So the ratio that you're pulling it sharp is less, and that's why you're doing a measurement at the beginning. Um, but um, but yeah, so my at least in people's houses, usually it's a 10 um, overall, but uh, it's kind of a feel too.
That's what I had heard before. To use a general rule of thumb is of 10 cents or 10% type of form. And I always just go off of A4 and where
Yeah,
it's at, unless it's you can really see that it's going to be really bad all over the place, and then take that into account.
yeah, that's a great question. So one thing I do, which is a little bit, it's a little weird. I have an app on my watch that will tell me very quickly if if A is however many cents sharp or flat. Um, I don't really. It's a guitar tuning thing, so I'm not really gonna go anywhere beyond a 440, right? But as I'm talking to the customer, and I can pull that up really quick, taking the case parts apart and having a conversation, I can quickly hit A and just double check to see if it needs a pitch raise or not. And um, that's one way you could do it. If it's on your phone, though, uh, you probably that's probably just an extra step. Um, but I actually have I have TuneLab on my iPad, and so I usually pull that after I've gotten my tools out. Or, and that's the thing, if it's a grand piano, I like to tune with my SAT. So sometimes I don't pull my iPad out at all, and that's kind of why I like to use my watch for that, just because, like, whether or not I'm going to pull out the iPad. That's just me though. So
That's good. Thanks.
okay, man. Okay, really hope this works. Okay, let me switch the audio, and then we'll go from there. Let's see. So it needs to be on. Are we getting an echo there? Are we getting an echo there?
There's an echo now, yeah.
Okay.
But we're not seeing the video.
Okay. Okay. I just wanted to switch the audio. Okay, here we go. Okay, here we go. Now is that flipped for you
No, it's showing correctly.
backwards? Okay. This is my process. Just at a relaxed speed. That so, I do it. So not really slowing down to show what's happening. And I do apologize. But I wanted to show that full speed. So again, if you have questions, go for it. So right at the break here, I do the left and the middle, and then the last one I do the middle and the right, and then I pull the thing out, and then I do the last two strings that I missed, and then I move past the break there. While we're watching this, I wanted to point out, just pay attention, well, take note of the order that I did that in, and we'll talk about that. So what I'm doing is I'm only looking at the screen for one of the strings. Usually on the trichords, it's the left string, and then I'm doing the other two by ear. So I'm only looking for one of those peaks. Here it's a little blurry, but same thing with the break. Left, middle, then this one's the middle on C. This is the right string. And then I pull this mute out and do the right on B and the left on C. There you go. So that's 13 minutes.
That's not fair.
Wow.
Yeah. That's how to do it. Okay. So let me switch this back and then I can.
Yeah, I can hear you again.
Is there still an echo?
Not right now.
Yeah,
Oh,
we're good
sweet.
on our end. You guys can hear me now.
Yes.
Yeah. I fixed it. We love technical, right?
Yeah. Can't go without it. Okay. Well, I'm not going to mess with that then. So the reason why I wanted to show this one is because I had recorded in the past times where I used just a mute or two for the top sections. But I wanted to show that using strip mutes for a pitch raise, which is actually somewhat controversial, can be just as fast, if not faster, sometimes, than just using mutes. My theory behind that, at least, is that you're not having to be as precise with your hand movements. So you have your hand on your tuning lever, and then instead of having fine movements of like getting it in between each string, all you're having to do once you put your strip mute in is you're just pulling it out. So you might have seen I was focusing on keeping my hand on my tuning lever most of the time, as much as I could at least. And then I was using my left hand to manipulate the mutes. So that way there was less movement and less positioning on my hands. And theoretically that decreases the time that I'm spending in between each note. That there's also different muting techniques with your mutes that you can do kind of the same way, but I wanted to show that first of all, at least.
How long did it take you to put the felts in there? The
Like a
temperament
minute.
strips? Okay.
I didn't count it because that's kind of the same amount of prep that you'd get with just mutes. I usually I'm taking apart. I'm doing my first assessment. I'm talking to the customer as I'm taking the piano apart, and then I'll also start putting my strip mutes in. If it's a pitch raise, then I won't do the bass section. I'll just do the top instead. If I know that it doesn't need a pitch raise, then I'll put that wide mute in the bass section instead, and I'll go from there. But that's why I didn't really I didn't start the timer there, because it's kind of part of my opening prep. But it is part of the reason why when I say that I like to keep that first part of the appointment to within 20 minutes. That's part of that reasoning, because every time I'm talking to the customer, I'm prepping the piano and I'm getting it up and measuring it and doing all of that, and then putting my strip mutes in.
So that's kind of the start of the appointment and the prep before you actually do any tuning at all.
Exactly.
Is that
right?
You're saying 15 to 20 minutes is the maximum that you want to have in that time
That's
frame?
what I'm shooting for every time, and that's every time I look down and I'm I'm checking to see if I'm consistent with that, and it's like, yeah, it's been 20 minutes. So um, that's why I'm not calling this like a 13-minute pitch raise, but I like to keep it at 20 minutes, and that's part of that. I'm counting the entire thing.
Jacob, if you use a different tuning app, would that change your strategy, or is it the same with TuneLab, CyberTuner, regardless
It
of what?
does. Now, I have not had the chance to use CyberTuner yet, so I don't know what the procedure is for that. But there is a big reason why I use TuneLab versus the SAT for pitch raise. The SAT is terrible for that. It takes way too much time, because you'll set up your tuning, and then your you kind of have to do it in chunks, and you'll do that calibration as every 4 or 5 notes, and then have to recalibrate the pitch raise. So it doesn't allow for a lot of flexibility if you're trying to be um, if you're doing it in a different order as well. um, it doesn't really help with that. So
That leads
yeah,
me to my next question, because I don't know TuneLab, but it's my understanding that if none of the strings in it, like a trichord, are muted, it'll still pick up which one you're tuning. Is that correct?
yes, yeah, that's why.
So why do you need the temperament strips then if it's picking up? Just out of
Right.
curiosity.
So I wanted to get it ready. Corbin sent me a wonderful video, and I'll have him post it. But it showed him doing a pitch raise with no mutes and just relying on following the peaks on the screen. I see. I think it's a little faster for me, at least, to do it by ear for the other 2 notes. But I also have a hard time tuning it by ear if there's more than if I'm if there's more than two dissonant sounds happening at the same time, it's really hard for me to hear that. So I'd like to mute one of the three and get both of those. Well, I'll get one just visually, then I get the next one aurally, close enough. And you heard how refined I made that, right? Like, it's not very refined, but it's close. We were trying to pull it a little bit sharp and quickly, so you'll hear it quickly go right where you need it to be, and then a little bit past, so a little bit sharp from where you're going, and then you kind of just let go of the tension, and then it'll fall to where you need it to be. And that would be the first two, and then I pull the mute out, and then now that last one I do it again aurally, but it's close enough, those two strings, that it's not causing any problems for me there. So that's why I'm using a mute.
So the mute you pull out after you've tuned two strings. So you're tuning one,
Correct.
You pull the mute out, you tune the other two, or you tune it. What were you tuning first? The middle?
Left, actually.
Left.
So
Okay.
it's kind of just, you're going string by string all the way up. So kind of in sequence, actually. Left, right, or left, middle, right, left,
okay.
middle,
Got
right.
it. Okay.
Except for the break right here, and then the break at the very top. Well, not the break, but the last two notes. Just because it's a little bit faster, and I don't have to stick a mute in again. I'm just taking advantage that the mute is already still there, and working with the two that are still loose. But
So Jacob, I will say from Pianoscope, while I think it can read all three, it's easier for me to deal with just two strings. To hear the difference. So you can tune one, then when you're tuning the other aurally, but also if you want the visual comparison of how it's doing to match those up, then it if you have two as opposed to three, it works a lot better.
right, yeah. The other thing is, if you're not, say your whatever program, at least before before there was like an actual protocol or a formula for that, what I used to do was, if the piano was like within 20 cents, around 20 to 30, I would probably just put it at about 10 cents sharp on my tuning file, and then do a pitch raise in the same way. So that's actually how that's how I ended up doing the SAT, at least. Not using the SAT's protocol, but actually just doing it at 10 cents or at 15 cents sometimes. Or if it was really bad, and if it was a pretty new piano, then I would go all the way up to 20. But because that's basically what it's doing, right? It is more precise because you're taking measurements. So if you can do that, by all means. But in a pinch, Pianoscope or whatever you're using, you can just set an offset of sharp at a certain point, either 10, 15. I really would be cautious about going 20 cents sharp, unless it's a fairly newish piano and you don't see any corrosion or anything. Then it's
Well, I was impressed with Jacob I was watching your right hand and the way you were holding the hammer and how you went so quickly just with that one hand in and out, because I don't know if that's something that's harder over time, because I find myself having to make sure I'm not flagpoling, to put it on the pin tight enough and then pull it straight out so I don't wobble it and mess the tuning up. But you were just bam, bam, so quickly. Is that something you developed over time? Is there, I wish I could analyze what your right hand is doing, because I was really impressed with the speed and the quickness of how you set each pin.
I'm going to post the video so that you guys can come back to it anytime you want to. Because I put some effort into that video. So might as well let you guys have it, right? It's something that you'll develop over time. But that's the whole point of this, right? There's hope. Everyone can do this. This isn't that bad, actually. A big reason why I like showing this in real time is because, especially when people are first starting off, there's a tendency to try to get it way more perfect. You're trying to be right on with either when you're watching it visually, or if you're trying to do it orally, you're people are really dialing in on that first unison. And that's not the purpose of a pitch raise, or at least, that's my philosophy on a pitch raise.
Yeah, I'd say for me, that's what I've been working on, when I'm doing a pitch raise, trying to not be perfect and just try to move through as quickly as possible. And to your point, just get through it so that you can then do a second pass at a fine tuning.
Right.
At least an initial fine tuning. It won't be perfect because it's pitch raise. And even that second tuning, that second pass isn't going to be super clean just because stability of having pulled the strings that much, and it needs to settle.
Right. Yeah. Well, and that's the thing is, when you do a pitch raise, if it's necessary to do a pitch raise at all, it's not going to stay where you put it. So if you're spending a lot of time getting it perfect on your measurements on the screen, or orally getting a perfect unison, by the time you've moved up 2 or 3 notes, it's already fallen flat. It's not going to be there. So that's the whole point of a pitch raise, is to get it to a point where the piano is at a tension level that you need it to be, that you want it close to that fine tuning point. So again, close to 0 cents sharp or flat, right? Like, we want it to be as close to that as possible. The protocol, or what the computer is doing, is it's taking a measurement of how flat it is, and then it calculates, it kind of guesses how far sharp it needs to go and how far it's going to fall flat. But there's a lot of things that that affect how far that's going to fall, and a lot of it has to do with the tension of the tuning pins and the torque and everything that's on there, right? So there's no way that the computer is going to know either. So again, the purpose, in my opinion, of a pitch raise is just to build the tension of the entire instrument back to where you need it to be, so that you can do a fine tuning and it stays in tune. Everything is kind of connected to each other, right? So,
and that's probably the reasoning for your order of starting in the mid-range, going up to a certain amount of the high treble, then doing the bass, and then doing the high treble, correct?
You caught
because
me,
you're
yeah.
setting tension in the center and working the tension across the pin block, across the plate and all of that into the soundboard, just working from the center all the way out, correct?
That is correct. Now, that I have to be perfectly honest. My reasoning for that is based on a few people telling me. I mean, I've had a lot of people, a lot of technicians talk about stability is increased if you're increasing tension from the middle out. And I've seen graphs and different things. So I personally, I like to try things out myself. That is a trend that you'll see, and you'll see it as we go. But because this is one of those things, it's harder to test stability. I'm still testing that out. So I don't know. I really don't know if that makes a difference or not. But at least that's the theory behind why I'm doing it in that order. I'm starting right here at the bass break, and I'm going all the way to A5, and then I start back here, and then I go down, finish the bass section, come back to A5, and then I continue all the way back up. So,
And
you know,
you use
adding
A5
pressure all the way
regardless
up.
of where the break is, right? You're
Correct.
just using that as your threshold.
Yeah. It's arbitrary, but for me, it's a little easier because then you can kind of click on the screen 5 times and then you get back to A5. So that's the main reason.
Jacob, as far as
That's Ace.
technique, hey, how's it going? As far
Good.
as technique, I saw that it seemed like you were mainly just going to the right, like you never really nudged it down. Was that just the way it came across the camera, or do you? Because I know, like, David likes to click down at the beginning.
Yes.
But I mean, usually the way I do, I click right and then I nudge down. But it seemed like you were just going right the whole time. Was that just me?
Yeah, I'm glad someone saw it. So I was thinking about that. That technique is still new to me. I'm still applying that to my everyday carry, right? I'm trying to do that. So admittedly, I recorded that at 9:30 last night, and I kind of defaulted to just my normal speed and what I do. Um, I have been focused on nudging it back down. So doing that, like you were saying, Ramses, going flat first. I really focus on that when I see any corrosion on the piano. Um, that's especially important, I think. So um, I I think it's important. I think it works. But yeah, you caught me. That I'm not. It's not embedded yet. 25 years of doing this, I do create habits, right?
Yeah, it's just that I've timed myself going through pitch raises, and I find that I lose a lot of time when I have to, or I add more time when I'm like starting going down, or just the amount of times that I go right and left. But yeah.
Yeah, it does. It probably well, and this one has the advantage of I know how old this is. This is it's about 20 years old. Uh, American Yamaha, right? It's not. It's been here in the state. There's not a lot of corrosion. Um, it's not going to break, and if it breaks, I'll fix it. But I'm not worried about breaking a string on this one. And I will take I'll take more time with a piano that's really flat and has corrosion. I'll finesse it, and I'll definitely pull it flat, because I'm trying to break any of those bonds that might have happened with the rust and the plate. Um, that's the main reason why it's breaking there, is because it's bonding. So yeah, that it is going to add some time. I think it's worth it because I don't know, replacing a string does take more time too. So, but also I don't know. We're gonna get to the point. You all will get to the point where breaking a string is not going to be scary anymore. It's just going to be part of life. Strings break. So no matter what technique you're doing, sometimes it's going to break. So I don't know. I feel like, well, one of our goals, I guess, is we're going to get to that point where you're going to feel comfortable about replacing strings, where it's not going to be a stress in your daily life. And hopefully that'll reduce your workload, your stress load, and make life more more enjoyable. Because this is a fun job.
I have one more question. Okay, you just finished this and you're in the customer's house. 15 minutes, maybe 30 total with taking everything. What's your next step? You're not just going to walk out the door and close the lid and put it back together. What's your follow up on the second pass? How long would that take you, depending upon how flat it was?
So this would be the first pass. So at that point, if it's around 20 cents, I've already done a measurement, or in this case, I already have plenty of other M500 Yamahas that I've measured before. So I have the file, and I'll just start tuning. Or if I don't have that, then I will take a measurement. I'll actually do the measurements depending on what tuning device I'm using, right? Because it does affect the overtones just a little bit, right? So once we've brought the tension up to where we want it to be, then I do the measurement, and then I start my tuning. What I usually do is I actually don't know what David's procedure is at this point. So we'll have him explain that later. What I usually do is, I'll do a fine tuning at this point. If the piano needs 2 pitch raises, then that's when I'll go, okay, we need to let it settle, and I need to come back another day. That's been my experience, at least. So I like doing it that way. Often, so a couple weeks ago, in fact, it was 150 to 200 cents flat. I brought it up to 15 cents sharp, and it fell to, I think, 60, 70 cents flat again after that pitch raise. So then I did it again. I remeasured that, and I did another pitch raise because it was now 60 to 70 cents flat, and I did a second pass on that pitch raise. Then it was close. Now it stayed there. That's when I would walk away. That's when I'd be like, "Yep, let's reschedule. Let's do another one in a week or so." Again, I don't know, Stacy, is that similar? What have you seen? Oh, I can't hear you.
No, you're still. Now you've gone.
I can't hear you.
Now, can you hear me?
Yeah, now
Yeah.
you're good.
Oh, hey, we got it. Okay, I have just had troubles with technology today. So I've seen a variety of things. So at Artisan, I don't know, Jacob, if you talked about like how far out. We kind of say if it's 10 cents flat, it's going to need a pitch raise. That's when we tell the customer. That's kind of our draw the line in the sand if the techs aren't sure. I don't know. What did you say? Your kind of like line is that 10?
Yeah.
So we've been saying 10. We're like, hey, if it's over 10 cents flat and they just scheduled a tuning, we have to have that conversation. Say either we pitch it a few different ways. Like your piano's over 10 cents flat, it's going to need we're going to need to go through it twice. Or we can say something like it's behind in tuning, so we got to catch it up. That's a way to say it. Or you can say, like, I love the painting a black wall white analogy. Like, we're going to need another coat of paint to get this. So depending on how flat it is, we can just, a lot of times my techs will just, if it's like 10 cents, they'll just do a pitch raise and then the tuning. We charge extra for that extra time. And then,
but they'll do it right then, right?
They will do it right then. But if it's more, you're getting 30, 40, 50 cents, then we always say this is going to need, we warn them, it's not going to hold. We just threw it really, it's not used to the tension that we just, so we usually say we're going to need a follow-up. In fact, I'll tell you what I wrote. Like I literally wrote the verbiage for one of my assistants, like to how to explain it. I'll try to find it because it was good. I was like, yeah, I like how.
But definitely managing expectations of what the piano is going to do after a large movement in pitch. Do that every time, because yeah, it's going to go out of tune way faster than annual or biannual tunings. It's just gonna, it's not as stable.
I've been using an analogy of a rubber band that, hey, we're stretching the strings like a rubber band, and they're going to want to pull back. So until we get it into stability where we've stretched it and it's not going to want to snap back, then that's how I've been talking about it.
That's great. Yeah,
I like the rubber band. The more ways we can help them understand why we're needing more time, why it's not holding.
Good analogy.
It's really helpful.
This morning.
Yeah, I'll usually say something like, "That's 10 cents. 10 cents is quite below standard pitch, and we brought it back to proper tension and pitch. But when a piano's that far out of tune, it's not going to hold the tuning on the first pass. So, and that's normal and it's expected when the piano's gone that flat over time. So the strings just need a chance to settle under the new tension, and then a follow-up tuning will kind of help it, hold that. And usually they're pretty good about it. But yeah. Another thing, I was going to say one more thing, like when they call, I usually say, do you know when the last time you tuned your piano was? Like if they're not, and if they're like, oh yeah, it's been like 20 years or 10, you'll know right away, like, okay, we're going to definitely need to give extra time because it's probably, or if they say more than 2 years, I even kind of like to prep it like, okay, it should just, if it might just need a tuning. If it needs more, we'll just see where the pitch is when we get there and we'll know right away. So
yeah, I'm actually marketing within my system that my tiers are, if you're wanting just a tuning, it almost has to be within the past 2 years that it's been tuned. If it's more than 2 years, then I've got it blocked out as needing pitch raise.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's pretty typical. I don't know. Jacob, do you find that that's normal if it's been over 2 years, they always need a pitch raise? Or do you find that's
most of the time. There's always an exception. And I've run into those. It's weird.
It's just another reason to schedule every year, because you're gonna have to make it up eventually. Like don't wait too long, right?
Well, and the same thing with regular maintenance of regulation and voicing of pianos, that if it's not done at least a little bit every once in a while, then it gets so far out that you got to do a lot of work.
Yeah. Now, kind of with this framing, now that you kind of know at least how I do a pitch raise and how quickly I do it, and how refined we're talking about each note, which is no, it's not. That's how I talk about, or that's what I mean by doing a pitch raise regulation, or doing a task, doing a first pass like a pitch raise. Our dampers that we've been talking about the last week or two, same thing. You want to do a pitch raise of damper regulation. You want to get it just get it in quickly. That's kind of the philosophy behind that phrasing. But yeah, that I'll say that in the future as well. That's what I mean.
Because it's kind of like if we're regulating a grand piano, you have pre-regulation, which is you got to get all the hammers off of the rest rail. And that's kind of what you're thinking about. You're not going to look for fine tuning of the hammer blow distance. You're just wanting to get them off the rest rail. And that's what you're saying. You just go through it as quickly as possible just to get them off the rest rail.
Yeah. And often even, well, if you're replacing parts, then you're kind of just doing it by the measurement. You're not quite doing it from where it's supposed to be quite yet, but same thing. you have brand new hammers, brand new shanks, brand new weapons, and so you're just, everything is new. So you could actually, that is a very likely time that you're going to break things. So you need to quickly get it within range so that you're not going to break a jack or a hammer or something just because now let off is 2 inches above the string line. So that's what I mean. Do a pitch raise, get it within reason quickly. And this Friday we're going to talk about. Well, David's going to be talking about the philosophy of regulation. Is that right, Stacy?
Yeah, I think we might need to move it to Monday because I found out he's out of town. He might not be back in town Friday morning. I was like, oh, I'll let you guys know. I'm so sorry. It's July is crazy. But yeah, but I am really excited. I am really excited to go through like the details, like just make it really simple. And I've been watching what we've been writing. Well, no, I haven't been writing it. I'm just like helping. It's been like, oh, it's good. I've learned a lot too. So I'm excited to share all that with you guys. Yeah.
Oh, last thing I want to talk about really quick. We have like 2 minutes. One thing that has come up many times with many other people, I've had this question come to me from the universe, right? What about doing a pitch raise when it's too sharp? Or a pitch correction over pull, right? Like that's why it's not always called a pitch raise, because sometimes it's too sharp. So when does that apply? Well, okay, because of entropy and everything, right? Usually pianos are going out of tune flat, but sometimes they go sharp, especially if they're moving and stuff. So my line for flat was a hard 10 cents flat. For sharp, usually I'll wait till like 15 to 20 if it's that sharp. If it's at 15, I'll just do a fine tuning from there, because it's relaxing, but I do want to focus on doing it from the middle out. So I'll tune it a little bit differently when it's very sharp. But I think for the most part, if it's sharp but within 15 cents, you probably don't have to do a pitch correction.
Advice, because my upright is always sharp in the winter. Always. It's always at least 5 cents sharp. I don't know what is going on with that. It just always goes sharp. Yeah, it's probably sharp right now, actually. So interesting.
It doesn't come up very often, but it is something, we want to put it out there.
Interestingly enough, in the Pianoscope documentation in the user manual, they actually talk about, well, you use the same feature if you're pulling it sharp down as opposed to flat up. They'd say you use the same process. It is no different.
Right. When it is extremely sharp, and I have seen that, I've actually seen a couple people tune it sharp specifically for shipping it across country. So they'll pull it like 20 cents sharp because they know it's going to go wherever. I don't know, but that's what I've run into. And so in those cases, I'll do the same thing like you're saying. I'll use the pitch raise mode in TuneLab, and it is going flat in the same way. It's overshooting it by a little bit because it does tend to pull sharp again. It's fascinating. It's weird, but it does do that.
I've actually run into it within the past week or so, where I was doing a pitch raise within Pianoscope using the pitch raise function, and some of the notes, because they were already sharp, as opposed, most of the piano was flat, but there were some notes that were sharp. And instead of that center line, and normally you over pull over, it was asking you to go, not a whole lot, but a little bit flat, to your point. And so it was actually pretty fascinating.
That's
It's
awesome.
a situation you
awesome.
don't see very often.
I still got to try out Pianoscope too. That's next on my list because it's cheaper.
I've been having a lot of success with it. It's the only ETD that I have used, so I've gotten to know it pretty well. And eventually I need to do some recording so that I can share it with the group and let them see the process on Pianoscope as a frame of reference.
That'd be awesome. Well, awesome guys. I really appreciate it. I'm so happy that worked. I'm glad that you could hear it.
No, it worked really well. That was very successful.
Oh, that was awesome from what I was able to, on my end, it didn't work on my end, but your end looked great.
So,
video, sound, everything.
So I will post that. It'll be in 1080p, so you can zoom in or whatever. I want it to be a resource. So if you have any questions, reach out to me. But yeah, thank you so much for coming. Thanks for hanging out. That was fun.
Thanks.
Okay.
Have a great rest of your day, you guys.
Friday or Monday.
We'll talk to you later.
Love you guys.
Bye.
See ya.
Bye.